Do we have any way of knowing the scale of corruption?
American taxpayers can be relaxed. Whatever money are being sent to Ukraine, they are not being embezzled in the defense procurements.
Daria, we have some problems lately. There's been attacks on members of civil society, video recording members of the biggest info.
I can name the person who is behind that.
A lot of our readers need to be reminded why he's so dangerous in the position that he is in.
Zelenskyy, as a mirror of the country, must react. He can't just ignore that. We can't have elections now. Russia will use this to kill Ukrainian democracy.
Hello, everybody. This is Brian Bonner, and I'm welcoming you to Hromadske Radio's Ukraine Calling. And thank you for our listeners and viewers around the world. This is going to be a very enchanting program. Now, we have bad news on the weather and the war front, unfortunately, but the bright spot is the presence of Daria Kaleniuk in the studio. Hi, Daria.
Good to be here. Thank you for inviting.
And if this conversation sounds like a conversation between two longtime friends, it is. We've known each other for a long time. She is the executive director of the Anti-Corruption Action Center and more. She was named by Ukrainsky Pravda as one of the 100 most powerful, influential women in Ukraine. Definitely, she's in the top 100. And she's also been a reliable part of this vast network of civil society, one of Ukraine's strengths. So before we get into the corruption part of it and the war on corruption, how that's going, maybe you can talk about how your organization has changed from the war, because I know you've been campaigning actively for Make Russia Pay. And there's $360 billion, I believe, in assets, Russian assets, frozen around the world, mostly in Europe. And, before today, I read the news. The G7 finance ministers are meeting in Italy, and they're again dancing around this issue. Russia's war is illegal. Their seizure of territory is illegal. They're committing war crimes. That's illegal. They are destroying property. That's illegal. And yet, why is it that the international community is tying themselves up in knots about whether seizing the assets is legal or not? You're a lawyer. Please enlighten me.
As a lawyer, I would want to say that lawyers shouldn't decide this issue. The issue of seizing Russian assets should be decided by politicians and by leaders, because actually law is following the realities and geopolitical situation and international situation with the world. And all the international law basics was designed after World War II, after tens of millions of people were slaughtered. And this caused setup of new rules. And now we have another tipping point in the international relations. This is the genocidal war happening in Ukraine by Russia, which is partnering with other autocracies, Iran, China, North Korea. Russia is bringing soldiers and troops from actually across the world. Even some people from Africa are now earning money serving in Russian armed forces and participating in this genocide against
Sri
Ukraine.
Lanka and other places.
And India and many, many other places. We might not know everything. But the point is that it's not just some local small conflict or just Ukrainian war, as many media are still portraying that. It's actually a tipping point in the way how the world will develop, in the way whether autocracy will win democracy, whether the liberal world will still exist. Ukraine is just the battlefield for all of that. It means that the set of the rules which exist now, which sometimes put in specific framework, lawyers, financial experts, technical people, they are out of date. They have to be put aside, and politicians, leaders who actually represent the will of the people and who have to respond to the challenges must redesign new rules. And that is not actually much of new rules if you're talking about the confiscating of Russian sovereign assets. Because
it's been done before. Iraq.
It's been done before.
They invaded Kuwait.
even existing legal framework is more or less allows tools how to get it done. So
and why are they holding this up? Is it because they want to do business as usual with Russia?
Because they are too afraid, I think. Because some still think that, they can come back to the business as usual. But they are also influenced a lot by some companies. First of all, there is a huge company, Euroclear. It's a Belgian financial institution, EU clearing center, I would say, which holds most of the seized money, arrested money. It's about 191 billion euro, merely Russian sovereign money. They were frozen in 2022, and this institution is earning huge profits of this money. For 2 years, they earned more than 5 billion euro. And this institution is represented by its CEO. It's a woman. I don't remember her last name. But she's now in her tour across Europe, spreading fears among leaders, financial experts, financial ministers, saying that, oh my God, if you confiscate, if you seize Russian sovereign money, entire financial system of EU will collapse. Also, this institution goes to the Prime Minister Office of Belgium and is saying, we are a critically important institution for you. We cannot be forced to seize these assets. It's unprecedented. It's too many risks to us, Tomorrow, Russia will go to all courts of the world, and we will have to spend zillions of euro in order to protect us, which is absolute bullshit. When we tried to figure out how many lawsuits did Russia submit and where against Euroclear, what they were able to tell us is just a few in Russia. Who damn cares about the lawsuits in Russia?
Yeah.
Are there courts in Russia?
Well, we have lawyers too, or the West has lawyers too, and I would not want to be in Russia's position if we battled it. But the problem with lawsuits, as you know, is they take a long time, sort of like our criminal investigations here. But do you see a breakthrough imminent, or is this just going to keep fighting? Because do you agree that, we're going to need this money because it looks like, obviously, the West is flagging in its support of Ukraine?
The West cannot suggest the alternative. Okay? If you don't want confiscating this 300 billion, which merely are placed in Belgium, France, a little bit in Germany, in Japan. So if you guys are not ready to confiscate that, what is the alternative? So are you ready to generate 300 billion for Ukraine, to arm Ukraine? I don't see that kind of readiness. There was quite a battle to get EU approve Ukraine peace facility, which is 50 billion or so.
Over the 4 years.
Yeah, over 4 years, 2/3 of these are actually loans.
Right.
And not a single euro can be spent on defense.
So it's not enough.
And it's not been spent on defense. So how can we defend ourselves? Where should we get money to pay our military? Where should we get money to buy weapons? If we are not given assistance for that, and there is money which Russia keeps in Europe. So we're saying, oh, all right, you don't have money, you're taxpayers, okay, fair enough. You have more reasons, more important things to spend on. You can't increase prices for electricity, etc. But you're sitting on Russian money.
Yes.
You're earning on Russian money.
Yes.
Euroclear is profiteering. And so the first step which the European Commission will be doing now, in June, they want to decide to take profits earned by European institutions and Russian sovereign frozen money and spend them on Ukraine. But the thing is that they don't want to take profits earned by Euroclear in 2022, 2023. And what's the reason for that?
That's 5 billion in interest or profit?
It's about 5 billion. It's between 3 to 5 billion, depending how you
calculate it. But as Timothy Ash says, that doesn't even touch the sides of what Ukraine needs.
But that's...
And they won't even do that.
It doesn't even challenge any legal international issues. This money don't belong to Russia. This money belong, for some reason, to Euroclear, which earns this money at blood of Ukrainians.
The ultimate war profiteering.
It's war profiteering, and when we initially came to Belgium and raised that, the high-level governmental meetings with Belgium, they said, no, sorry, we will not change our mind. We want to keep this money, and you will not convince us. And we said, oh, really? You don't know about Ukrainian civil society?
Right.
Your decision is not known by your parliament. Your decision is not known by your civil society. We will make sure that everybody knows about that.
You have a formidable group of allies, a very powerful group of allies, because I know a lot of them. Is that your number one priority, your number one war priority?
We have a few teams, Anti-Corruption Action Center, which is focusing on reforms inside Ukraine and also on confiscation of Russian assets. After the large-scale invasion, we set up International Center for Ukrainian Victory, which is focusing more on international advocacy and on advocating for everything Ukrainians to win the war. Obviously, we were focusing a lot on the supplemental.
But that came from Antec.
It came
the coalition.
Antec is one of the co-founders with a few more organizations, Supporta and ANS. And so Ukrainian civil society groups are joining our efforts. My main job, I'm anti-corruption activist in Ukraine. I'm building rule of law.
But if we don't have a country, we don't have any corruption
that's the
to
point.
fight.
That's the point. So we will fix our corruption and we will keep our democracy in good shape. But if there are ballistic missiles raining and glide bombs raining every day, it's hard to build democracy.
Two of the guests I had on this were Ben Hodges and Kurt Volker, as you know, both of them. And they basically say the fundamental problem is the West hasn't decided that they want Ukraine to win this war. Do you agree?
I agree. But I see that slowly, at least our European allies are waking up. So they start to understand what is the alternative? If Ukraine is not winning this war, so what's that? Peace negotiations? Well, I see more and more people try to understand that unlikely there will be any sustainable peace. More and more people start to understand, even among leaders, that the peace on Russian conditions means more war in future, including more war against directly NATO. That is a good trajectory. But still, if you look on Olaf Scholz and Germany, well, Germany is number 2 country after America in amount of military aid provided to Ukraine. It is still self-deterring. And Olaf Scholz is afraid to send towers to Ukraine because, oh my God, Ukraine can destroy Kerch Bridge.
They have 600 of those towers sitting around too.
And also when Sullivan is coming to Ukraine and saying, don't strike to Russian oil refineries. What are you doing? You're bad, not Ukrainians.
That's pretty insane.
We are not providing you supplemental and no military aid in 7 months, and you dare to strike into Russian oil refineries. And we are responding, okay, where are your grave sanctions? The largest grave sanction was actually Ukraine striking into these oil refineries and preventing more oil from Russia to be sold, and more money to Russian military budget to come to buy more weapons to destroy more Ukrainians.
Well, let's hope the momentum starts going our way again, Ukraine's way again. And one big start would be the $60 billion. And another big start would be if Europe does wake up. And you're right, I am seeing signs that they are. They've been pretty defenseless continent for too long. But I think with the prospect of Donald Trump returning to the White House, I don't think they have a choice except to actually to shoulder more of the burden themselves. And Ukrainians and you and the civil society activists have done a great job, I think, of explaining why you can't negotiate with Russia. I mean, how many agreements has Russia broken? I mean, virtually all of them, I think. I don't think there's any that they've upheld. So that's a no-go zone for the world, I think. And for all the Ukraine haters and those who are looking for reasons not to help Ukraine, we talk about corruption because we love Ukraine and we believe that corruption is stealing from the future of Ukraine and stealing from its prosperity of Ukraine. And there's a big difference between a democratic society like Ukraine that is exposing corruption, fighting it, developing ways to prevent and to punish it, and a complete criminal mafia state like Russia, which doesn't even bother. and actually exports corruption, death, destruction all over the world. Did I say that correctly?
Beautifully said.
All right.
I have nothing to add.
I am trying to catch up, and I am losing track of all the corruption scandals. So I guess I'll just throw it out generally. Where are we at now in the battle against corruption, in the war against corruption, which is an internal war for every country, including America? And maybe you can start with, I think the most appalling corruption during times of war would be in defense or defense procurement.
I would add one more thing to how you explain the problem of corruption, that corruption used to be and still is a very important tool in the hands of Kremlin. It is called strategic corruption, when they are using their agents of influence, when they are bribing politicians, when they are installing their politicians and political projects and media projects all across the world in order to destroy some countries from inside, like they have already done successfully with Belarus, or in order to control the narratives in some countries, like they are doing in Hungary. In Ukraine, they have tried hard to use corruption to destroy Ukraine from inside without having actually the conventional war. There were attempts to change our important legislation through the Constitutional Court. They have invested hard into the political project of Viktor Medvedchuk, a former so-called leader of opposition. They have wired him millions and millions of dollars from Russia, generated at piping oil and gas, to media projects. There were 3 national TV channels in 2019 and 2021 controlled by Medvedchuk, which spread Kremlin propaganda. But they failed. They did fail in their any attempts to take control of Ukraine just using corruption and other means and tools. Why they failed? Because we were actually quite successful in building independent institutions, a system of checks and balances. Ukrainian civil society is strong, and in Ukraine there emerged politicians and governmental officials, not all of them, but many, who are actually true patriots of the country and trying to do things right. That actually made Putin very nervous, and he decided, okay, I can't control you like I control Belarus. I will throw hundreds, thousands of my soldiers, thousands of missiles and bombs. I will just destroy you, and you will give up. No. We are not giving up, and we are not giving up even during this large-scale invasion in our consistent fight with corruption and building strong democratic institutions and system of checks and balances. It's quite unique to the world, and including in the defense sector. So I would say even most importantly in the defense sector. Unfortunately, it was our mistake of our team as well, Anti-Corruption Action Center, not to look into that defense sector previously 12 years when we were operating.
Since the revolution.
Since the revolution, even before the revolution of dignity. And since the revolution of dignity, there were many reforms in the healthcare sector, in educational sector, even in environmental sector, even in energy sector, but almost zero reforms in Ministry of Defense. There have happened some important positive changes in the army, in the armed forces, because of many volunteers after Maidan, straight from Revolution of Dignity, volunteered to fight against Russian aggression, which has started not 2 years ago, but which started 10 years ago in 2014. But the Ministry of Defense and the way how procurements are being done, the way how this people are appointed to different positions, the way how the defense production sector operated, everything was super post-Soviet and super closed. from the eyes of outsiders and from the eyes of civil society.
Citing security. I mean,
Natural
security.
Well, it's national security. Level of security has to be there,
Right.
but not everything should be a top state secret. But also complexity, because defense, especially if you're talking about arms, it's complex. So probably arms transfers and arms procurement are the most complicated. We can probably compare these kind of procurements to the healthcare, medications procurements. So you have to understand that market. But in Ukraine, those who understood that market were, post-Soviet people whom we inherited after the collapse of the Soviet Union, former directors of defense companies, who for the last 35 years were actually selling the old Soviet junk weapons all across the world. And we were serving weapons which we sold to some different countries in the world, repairing these weapons. And now, after the large-scale invasion, the system had to change the way how it operates. Instead of selling stuff, junk stuff which we have inherited after the Soviet Union, we had to buy it. And not just junk, and not just Soviet, but actually NATO standard equipment. And that changes the entire framework, how MOD should operate. New people has to come there. People who are thinking not with Soviet folk style. We have to build trust into the system so that Western partners, and especially those countries and companies which produce weapons, have trust that whatever they sell to Ukraine, the technology is being protected, and that the bribe will not be required.
The kickback, the famous kickback.
Yeah. So, and we've raised that issue super high by exposing a year ago corruption in procurements of food. It's not weapons; it's just food.
But that triggered the ouster of Mr. Reznikov.
But that triggered important changes. Reznikov was fired, unfortunately, with a delay, just in September 2023. The new minister was appointed, Umerov, who actually started the cleanup of the defense procurements. And now we have the two agencies. Agency on non-lethal procurements, headed by Arsen Zhumadilov, a known reformer who previously in the past cleaned the system of medical procurements.
Okay.
And just recently, there was appointed the new head of the Defense Procurement Agency.
From Ukrenergo, she was.
She is from Ukrenergo, and she is one of the best procurers in the country. She received a few awards from Prozoro for how she does procurements.
So, are you saying you have faith that we're on the way to recovery here?
I'm saying we don't have any other choice and any other option. I'm saying that our team has now crystal clear focus to make sure that things will be repaired, especially in lethal procurements.
Do we have any way of knowing the scale of corruption now
in Ukraine or
in defense procurement? Because there's massive amounts of equipment, money, procurements going on a scale that was never done before by Ukraine.
Well, first of all, it is important to separate whatever corruption is happening in the defense procurements in Ukraine. This is our taxpayers' money. Because we are not allowed to buy weapons or to spend anything on defense from the money which is coming from our partners. It is both good and bad. Mm-hmm. The good thing, American taxpayers can be relaxed. European taxpayers can feel safe that whatever money are being sent to Ukraine, they are not being embezzled in the defense procurements. This is the first thing. Second thing, we want American money, EU money, and first of all, Russian money, confiscated Russian money, to come to Ukraine, to be spent in Ukraine, but Ukrainian defense procurement agencies on weapons. This is the road to sustainability. We have to be able in Ukraine ourselves to purchase what we need. We shouldn't be dependent on what is in the mind of Mike Johnson or Donald Trump or Olaf Scholz or whoever. We have to be our kind of leaders inside our country. We also have to have resources and capabilities to buy weapons from our producers. And amazing solutions emerged in Ukraine in defense industry, especially among private invaders in the army who cooperate with the army. Like all this industry of drones, small drones, big drones, long-range drones, drones which are hitting oil reserves in Russia, drones which are hitting Russian fleet in Black Sea. All that is designed, produced in Ukraine by Ukrainians for the money which Ukrainian taxpayers paid. So we have to scale that up. And we know that we will be able to do that if our procurement institutions in defense industry will be more effective, where we will get rid of people who are notorious, who have on whom we don't have trust, who probably have the background of sympathizing Russia. So that network of people were not cleared yet from the industry. And we just don't have other option. We have to get it done now, this time.
During war.
Yes.
At the heart of the matter is intent. Mikhail Zhirnikov, du jour, said it aptly. We have not had governments that wanted rule of law, independent judiciary, a real fight against corruption, swift and sure justice. Do we have that now in the Zelenskyy administration?
There are many people in the Zelenskyy administration who want to get it done right. But I also see many people who don't want to get it done right. And there is conflict between them. The question is whether Zelenskyy wants to get it done right. And I don't have the clear answer. I see that Zelenskyy really wants to get Ukraine into the EU and NATO. And this is a very positive sign. This means that whatever reforms regarding rule of law are listed in the conditionalities on the way to the EU and NATO, they will be implemented. And we've already witnessed that. When in June 2022, European Commission told, yeah, we are ready to issue you status of candidate country to the EU, but first implement these 7 conditions. 5 of them were about rule of law. Constitutional court, reboot, then appointment of the specialized corruption prosecutor, anti-money laundering legislation. All 7 were done. Mm-hmm. And we've got, in November 2023, very positive feedback from the European Commission. And then the European Commission issued the report highlighting what else has to be done. I hope that in June, finally, we will open negotiations between Ukraine and European Union about membership. And these negotiations will start from Chapter 23-24. These are fundamentals in European Union accession track. This is about the need to reform all law enforcement agencies, prosecution, police, security service of Ukraine, State Bureau of Investigation, Bureau of Economic Security.
Hallelujah, at last. We have a lot to talk about here, and I think now is a good time to take a break. I'm with Daria Kaleniuk, Executive Director of the Anti-Corruption Action Center. We'll be back soon. Daria, we have some problems lately. There's been attacks on members of civil society, investigative journalists, SBU, video recording members of the biggest info. In a time of war, they actually have time to harass journalists and civil society activists. What is going on and who's behind it and how widespread is this and has it stopped or will it stop?
I can name the person who is behind that. It's Oleg Tatarov, Deputy Chief of Staff of President Zelenskyy. He is coordinating officially the reform of all law enforcement agencies in Ukraine. And unofficially, he is coordinating actually the work of most of the law enforcement agencies in Ukraine. And without his blessing, attacks on civil society organizations, activists, and investigative journalists by law enforcement agencies is impossible. So it's a very dangerous tendency which has started at the end of last year, because in 2022, early 2023, everybody was united. Investigative journalists, civil society activists were doing their job. But the more we have started to expose, again, problems of some of the agencies, of some of the institutions, including the procurement in the defense sector, the more some bad people who are still there in power decided to use a very convenient tool, mobilization, which is a sensitive topic in Ukraine, in order to, A, discredit civil society activists, watchdog activists, and investigative journalists, B, drop them to the army to make sure, and send to some places to make sure that they are not able to speak freely about the issues they are speaking about, and then use this to discredit civil society activists, investigative journalists among society, saying that, you see, they don't have to talk about corruption or some notorious public officials. They don't have right to do so, because why there are so many Ukrainians who are in trenches protecting Ukraine from Russians, but not these guys.
I've read a lot about Oleg Tatarov, but I think a lot of our readers need to be reminded why he's so dangerous in the position that he is in. And I believe your position is, and civil society's position is, he has to go.
First thing, Oleg Tatarov was charged with corruption by newly established anti-corruption agencies, which Ukraine built after the Revolution of Dignity. So he was charged by NABU, National Anti-Corruption Bureau, for providing bribes at construction of apartments for military. And it was back in 2018, 2019, so many years ago, the activities which he has conducted. But the charges came when he was already appointed as Deputy Chief of Staff of President Zelenskyy. Andriy Yermak, the head of staff of President Zelenskyy, who was
Vice President Yermak.
yeah. So Andriy Yermak invited Tatarov to this position. A brilliant leader of the globe who was named by Time as one of the top 100 leaders in the world. So this one of the top 100 leaders of the world produced Oleg Tatarov at this position. No, Yermak. Well, and Zelenskyy approved that. So and after the charges were brought, at that time, Prosecutor General of Ukraine Irina Venediktova dropped these charges. So she took the case from NABU, sent this case to old non-reformed agencies, changed the prosecutor, and the case was closed. And Oleg Tatarov kept working as nothing has happened in his post, still in charge for law enforcement agencies in Ukraine. So there was clear conflict of interest. It's the first thing. Second thing, Oleg Tatarov, during the Revolution of Dignity, was serving in the special police units. And I would want to remind that in November 2013, December 2013, special police units were physically attacking protesters who went peacefully for the rally against the decision of, at that time, President Yanukovych to walk away from the EU. And Oleg Tatarov went public saying that these are not special police units attacking protesters. These are protesters attacking special police units. And this person is in charge for justice in the office of President Zelenskyy.
Instigated the Yanukovych violence or just recommended it against protesters?
I think he was part of the system which
the Yanukovych
attacked,
system.
of Yanukovych system, of pro-Russian Yanukovych system, which attacked civil society. He's part of the problem. He's not a solution. I don't see any reason why Zelenskyy would want to keep him in this position. I see all the reason for Yermak to keep him in order to control law enforcement agencies.
So the answer is, with him in position of power, great power, do we have any hope to get rule of law and transparency?
No. Until Tatarov is in charge for justice in the office of Zelenskyy, we don't have any chance of reforming this, monsters of law enforcement agencies in Ukraine, like prosecutor office, all police, all
SVU.
security service of Ukraine. So, I'm saying that this literally every day in Ukrainian media and foreign media. I think that Zelenskyy receives a lot of criticism because of that. Ukrainian society demands that change, but for some reason, Zelenskyy and Yermak decide to keep this very effective manager in his position. So just let's guess why he is such an important professional, what he's doing for Yermak and Zelenskyy.
I hope they're listening, and I hope they'll act, because it's not going to help the country. And I think we can do more than guess. But this is all under the heading of big powers are invested in a president during wartime, martial law. They have more powers than at any other non-war time. Is he the biggest abuse, or are there other abuses? I believe civil society is not happy, and I've talked to many people. Civil society is not happy with the powers that Yermak has had and the apparatus that he's built around him. What's the problem there? And what other abuses are you seeing during martial law?
Even before martial law, Zelenskyy got a lot of power because of his popularity, and he got 74% of votes during the presidential elections, and his party, Servant of the People Party, received majority in the parliament. So he didn't even had to negotiate about the coalition, and he didn't have to negotiate with the opposition about how to compose the government. So he was the one who generated the prime minister and government of Ukraine, and he was the one who controlled the parliament because of the Servant of the People. So he kind of 2 out of 3 branches of power he was controlling. But after the large-scale invasion, obviously, the role of the president even increased for obvious reasons. President is according to the constitution, is the top commander-in-chief of Ukraine. He, under martial law, has increased powers. His influence in foreign policy, his influence in defense. And Zelenskyy was extremely busy with all these media appearances, negotiations, working on mobilizing the world for helping Ukraine. Yermak, his chief of staff, who is with Zelenskyy 24/7.
Yes, that's for sure.
Well, whenever you see the photo of Zelenskyy, show me those photos where you don't see Yermak for the last 2 years.
Which is one reason why it's hard to believe Zelenskyy doesn't know what's going on.
So clearly Zelenskyy knows, but for some reason he trusts Yermak. But I think that...
Do we have to guess at that too? Or answer the question for all of us who are still guessing. Why is Tatarov and Yermak in their position?
Tatarov is in his position because he is useful for Yermak. Why Yermak is at his position? It's a big question to Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Because Yermak rose to the level of being really the vice president of Ukraine. He has more powers than the prime minister of Ukraine. He replaced all the minister of foreign affairs. He, I think, feels empowered when he has direct contacts with all national security advisors in the world, while his position is not the national security advisor. We have a separate position of national security advisor. So he's just chief of staff. Right. And Yermak has interesting advisors. Many of them are non-paid. They don't declare their asset declarations. They didn't go any special checks. But they travel with Yermak in very important negotiations. It's like I'm calling Daria Zarivna, Vlasyuk, and a few more external advisors. So these external non-paid advisors with no clearances have sometimes more power than the ministers. So this is not the way of governing the country during the large-scale invasion, and this is not building trust, unfortunately.
You know, I was at Arseniy Yatsenuk's security forum recently, and there's discontent bubbling up, and you would know better than I do the extent, but from political other factions, let's put it that way, they feel highly marginalized and highly defeated, and like they have zero voice in running the affairs. And as you know, we don't have elections during war. I agree with that. I think that's foolish for a democracy to have an election during war. But other people say, well, if we're not going to have that, why don't we have a unity government that brings in, Poroshenko's, Yatsenuk's, the Klitschko's, or whatever, everybody, like a war cabinet. Do you agree with that?
I think it's a very naive idea.
Naive? Mm-hmm.
I think at least we need to have the government of professionals who are not being restricted with being loyal to Zelenskyy and Yermak. Because those who have independent thinking and who can challenge opinions of Zelenskyy and Yermak are not staying in government for a long time. And even servant of the people faction and politicians don't have that level of access to Zelenskyy, which they should have.
I even heard some MPs haven't met him yet, or he hasn't met them. I don't know.
Well, Zelenskyy doesn't bother about the parliament.
Okay.
He doesn't treat them as something important. So what
is the solution then to make more people? Probably it's not a simple solution.
Not a simple solution. I think Zelenskyy needs to understand the threat coming from Yermak. And Yermak clearly has more ambitions than just being the shadow of Zelenskyy. You know, there is a joke, every vice president wants to be the president. So I think Yermak has this ambition. I think that he thinks he's more influential, smart, important than Zelenskyy.
Well, good luck with that.
And, even international media started to notice this. You know, in Politico, I've been in their office in Brussels in February this year, and the big wall with portraits of leaders of 2024. Mm-hmm. And on the top of that wall was Ursula von der Leyen, Emmanuel Macron, President of Turkey Erdogan, and Andriy Yermak. You have stopped President Zelenskyy, a doer. The green.
Which picture does not belong here?
Green Cardinal of Kiev. What the hell is that? And there was Zelenskyy, but a few levels down, jointly with Navalny, as a dreamer.
Well, let's put it this way. My money is on the Ukrainian people who know what to do with politicians who they stop supporting. They vote them out of office quite regularly.
We would have voted many inefficient people from Ukrainian government and parliament and presidential office if we have had elections. But I fully agree we can't have elections now, because Russia will use this to kill Ukrainian democracy. They will just fire hundreds of missiles on the day of the elections, and we are done.
Goes back to the original question, is the intent. Do you want to govern well and for the people, or you don't? And the issues you've raised are disturbing. The other thing that comes up from journalists is, you know how hard it is to dig up corruption when people are against you all the time and not giving you information. But Sybiga Musayeva, the editor-in-chief of Ukrainsky Pravda, said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I was there for it. She said, I really hope that we don't find out at the end of this war that there was, a lot of corruption that we didn't that we were ripped off, that we were stolen from during the war. How worried are you about that? That we don't know the full extent of what's going on?
We do know what is happening. And during the large-scale invasion, we'll trying to fix issues non-publicly. But if you're not able to do that, we go public. And the self-censorship of Ukrainian investigative journalists and civil society was over a year ago. And when we are exposing problems and talking about them publicly, officials must react. Zelenskyy, as a mirror of the country, must react. He can't just ignore that.
Do you believe that even if we don't get justice in a court of law, just exposing them has a deterrent effect?
Exposing corruption during the war is causing resignations and important investigations.
So it's already doing the job.
It is causing the change of the policies, like with the defense procurements. So this is the only way to go. And yes, we can have elections. However, if you look to the social polling, Ukrainians as a society think that corruption is number 2 threat to national security after the war. So it reflects the maturity of Ukrainian society and demand of Ukrainian society to the president to deliver justice. And that what makes us different from Belarus or Russia or other countries like that. It is impossible to have autocracy in Ukraine.
Right.
In Ukrainians, democracy is in the blood. We are very decentralized. There are a lot of kind of initiatives, and the reason why we actually survived in the first days after the large-scale invasion was so many grassroots initiatives just stood up in the army, in outside of the army. People started to self-organize, disregarding whatever the state was doing.
I suppose our viewers and listeners know I could talk to Daria for hours because she is so knowledgeable, and my money is on civil society and the Ukrainian people in this struggle. There's a lot of things I wanted to talk about during the war, but we'll have to save it for another time. I mean, during the war, we've lost or been fired a lot of people: the prosecutor general, the SBU chief, the National Bank of Ukraine governor, and a key deputy head, Kirill Timoshenko, who's back in the Defense Department. I hope he's not anywhere near procurement. Reznikov, on and on. The list goes on. And then we have, still a ways to go before we have swift and sure justice, because follow your updates, but as far as I know, the Kolomoisky case and Rotterdam too, Martinenko, and many other cases are still winding their way through courts. Correct?
They're in progress in high anti-corruption court, but the good thing about the judicial reform that actually during the large-scale invasion, we have rebooted fully the High Qualification Commission of Justice, of Judges, and High Council of Justice. So these are judicial self-governance bodies, firing and hiring bodies for judges. We've got the law passed in summer 2021, and in summer 2022, during the large-scale invasion, we were in full implementation phase. Right. So now these judicial self-governance bodies are firing very notorious judges. Yeah. This is a good thing.
Yeah, and we have
to give a credit to Zelenskyy for that.
Right. As you know, this whole rebooting and the new specialized judicial systems, anti-corruption bodies are working, and you're working, and Ukraine is glad, and we have a vibrant civil society. So Daria Kaleniuk, Executive Director, Anti-Corruption Action Center, glad you are where you are, and best of luck to you.
Thank you, Brian.
See you next time. And that's it for this week's show of Ukraine Calling. Tune in again next week, and we will have another exciting guest. Thank you all.